everybody, welcome back. Turnpike Fantasy Football 2013. I'm League Commissioner Kevin Mabula, and this is the Week 4 preview show. Wow, what a weird week this past one was, huh? As far as I can remember back, this is the earliest that we have had no undefeated teams left. After 3 weeks, everyone has at least one loss, and in some cases, 3 losses. But more uncertainty in this league this season than ever. Proof once again that I know nothing about fantasy football. I tried getting creative and pulled off a bunch of trades, much to no avail. I wind up thinking I have Vernon Davis as my tight end, so I could trade Jordan Cameron. So Jordan Cameron goes, Vernon Davis gets hurt, I don't have a tight end. Jordan Cameron goes and has the biggest week for a tight end outside of Jimmy Graham, which everybody knows that I love Jimmy Graham, and I definitely advocate taking him early and often in drafts. I think he is an excellent early round draft pick, but we'll get to him in a minute. I also want to let everybody know that as far as Ask Bobby C, Bob once again failed to answer the question in a timely manner. Again, Bob, I want to thank you for your commitment to this bit. You only had 5 days since I supplied you with the question, and last I heard from him was, oh, we'll get it to you by the end of the day today. Well, I don't have until the end of the day today, Bob. I do this at a certain time every week. Unlike you, I have a life, so I need to be able to get things done in a timely manner. Breaking news. And what seems to be just a season of firsts on Turnpike to Turnpike. Yet again, we have first. Breaking news. Bob Crane has responded to a question. Earlier in the day when I was doing the video, I said that Bob let us down again. Well, I just got an email from him with the answer. So here goes. This week's Ask Bobby C. Truth is, I just can't miss a reason to play that sounder. Once again, thank you, Mr. Anthony Parisi. Here's this week's question. And look at that. It comes to us from Daryl Rivas. Dear Bobby C., what would you think of an owner who spent conservatively 3 to 4 months and hundreds of mock drafts preparing for our yearly draft, and before week 3 has turned over more than half his roster? Do you think this is a good plan? Lack of patience. He only has 2 weeks of results to base his changes on after spending months getting a plan together. Or just a straight up recipe for a last place finish. Also, what is your over and under number for what week it is before Vic is done for the season? Signed, Daryl Rivas. You know you missed me. Well, Bob answered with this. Dear Daryl Rivas, maybe I should have started Dear Get a Life, blah, 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 blah. Spending all that time preparing for a draft is plain stupid. How much sex was impacted by this decision? And now the abandoned ship mode of trading away players, picking up new free agents, didn't get you anywhere. It clearly shows a lack of patience, a win-now mentality instead of trying to fix the problem. I wouldn't be surprised if your team ends up home for the holidays instead of making it the playoffs. Just like you, Daryl, going from one bad organization to another, such as the Bucks, just to make the big bucks. Mike Vick will be done end of October when the Eagles aren't playoff contenders and it's time to rebuild. Signed, Bobby C. Well, there you have it. Now, back to our regularly scheduled Week 4 preview show. As for anything else in the league this week, I'm noticing that all the longs are performing well. I'm noticing that most of the playoff teams from last year are not. And with that, let's get to last week's matchups. I want to start off with Matt Dreyfus's off in a corner taking on Mike Bonzi's Falls Jedi. And Matt wins this one, second one in a row, 91-68, knocking Mike down to 0-3. In this one, Matt got a very nice 33 points out of his quarterback, Cam Newton. He also got 14 points out of his kicker, Justin Tucker, and 10 points out of A.J. Green. Where Mike Bond got 22 points out of his Cincinnati Bengal defense, 17 points out of Matt Ryan, his quarterback, and not much else unless you want to count the 9 points that Denarius Moore got him. Coming up next, we have Little Bob Crane, Julius Jones taking on Jeff Zeminski, Paper Tiger, and Bobby knocking Jeff Zeminski from the ranks of the unbeaten with a 100-90 beating. Bob got 38 points out of Drew Brees, 22 points out of Calvin Johnson, and 17 points out of D'Angelo Williams, where Jeff got 28 points out of his quarterback, Matthew Stafford, 17 points out of his kicker, Matt Prater, and 10 points out of Frank Gore. And in another match of an undefeated, Kenny's Gladiators. I'm not going to refer to you as Kenny's Gladiators anymore, Kenny. It's the Gladiators. It takes me a while to build these graphics, guys. If you guys just go ahead and change your names on the fly weekly, it's not going to happen. So you're the Gladiators, Kenny. It's better, all right? You're the Gladiators, not Kenny's Gladiators. Kenny's Gladiators sounds disturbing. Anyway, you lose this one to Anthony Parisi's Woodbury Wankers. Now, Kenny, I'm looking at you here. This is embarrassing. You got beat by a guy who not only has Jeremy Maclin on his roster, who not only has Dustin Keller on his roster, but he also started Reggie Bush, who didn't even play in this game, was listed as out before kickoff, and Anthony, showing that he doesn't care, didn't even insert a new player, and he beat you 108-87. Folks, I don't understand fantasy football. I put in hours, and I mean hours of preparation before a draft. Hours. And then I work the waiver wire, I read things. I'm trying to watch every preseason game, highlights, everything, to put together the best team I can, and I have not won a game. Anthony has probably watched a quarter of football total this season, and he is 2-1. It's okay. Anthony wins this one 108-87. Anthony got 19 points out of Sidney Rice, 28 points out of the Chicago Bears defense, and 17 points out of his quarterback, Tom Brady. Where the Gladiators got 16 points out of his Seattle Seahawks defense, 14 out of Aaron Rodgers, and 14 out of Adrian Peterson. Jeff Araya Hezekiah, Golden Bombs, Hamilton Square Possum took on Greg Long's Get Work Done. Jeff remains at 0 wins and 3 losses, where Greg improves to 2-1. Greg wins this one 85-59. Greg got 31 points out of Peyton Manning, 14 points out of Wes Welker, and 14 out of his Minnesota Vikings defense. Where Jeff got 16 points out of Alex Smith, 10 points out of Doug Martin, and 9 points out of Dez Bryant. Now, what's interesting about this game is, and you know I have to go here, Jeff, because I just happened to notice the glaring discrepancy of your starters to your benched players. Jeff tried, I understand what you did here with starting Alex Smith over the Eagles because of the Eagles defense and all that, and the fact that Seattle hasn't really thrown a lot of touchdowns with Russell Wilson. But Russell Wilson was at home against probably the worst team in football in Jacksonville Jaguars, and not starting him had everybody in my office scratching their head why he wouldn't do that. And it turned out to be a pretty bad decision where you got 23 points out of him. But then the bigger one was that you had Josh Gordon on your bench. Now, I know he was suspended the first 2 weeks. You didn't know what to expect. Josh Gordon got 31 points on that bench. That is a brutal, brutal score to leave on your bench when your team only scores 59 total as starters. And that brings us to John Moore's previously undefeated Downingtown Destroyers taking on Deputy Commissioner Chris Long's Asgardian Thunder Gods. And Chris wins this one to improve to 2-1. Interestingly enough, all members of the Long contingent are 2-1 at this point. Chris wins this one 135-69. Chris got 24 points out of his newly acquired tight end, Jordan Cameron, 23 points out of his running back, Jamal Charles, and 18 points out of his New England Patriots defense. Where John got 30 points out of his running back, LaShawn McCoy, 13 points out of his other running back, Alfred Morris, and 9 points out of Stephen Hushka, his kicker. Now, John, believe me, I can feel your pain with that because I know that the points that you were counting on there from Vernon Davis weren't there. I mean, not Vernon Davis, I'm sorry, Colin Kaepernick. And I am concerned about that on multiple fronts, not just for your team, but I'm concerned for my 49ers because I don't know what's going on there, and it was pretty pretty paltry to watch this last week against the Colts. And in our last match of last week, my Warriors of Babylon took on the aforementioned Brian Sheehan's 1 gram equals a pound, and I am here to now mea culpa, Brian Sheehan. I am sorry about making fun of your pick of Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham leads his team again in points with 30. What a tight end this guy is. Maybe Sheehan was some kind of savant when he picked him so high. Everybody else kind of laughed, and he kind of knew what he was doing. I doubt that, but I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, Sheehan. But this guy's a beast. He got you 30. You got 27 points out of your Baltimore Ravens defense and 18 points out of Robert Griffin III. Where with my newly acquired quarterback Mike Vick in my trade to you, I got 17 out of him, which was really nothing. 30 points out of DeMarco Murray and 18 points out of Joique Bell, my other traded star that I got. So that was basically a trade that went down this past week. Brian and myself traded a bunch of players. The day I trade Trent Richardson, he winds up going to the Colts. And I want to apologize to the rest of you in the league for doing this to everybody, because this league could be in trouble with Sheehan having those running backs, those quarterbacks, that tight end, a handful of receivers. It could be very long season for us, especially me and you, Bob, because we're going to have to hear it from him. We have to watch the master at work. Let's get to this coming week's matchups. So really, once again, Turnpike to Turnpike is proving to be a very parity-driven league. Again, this is the first time that I can really remember somebody not being undefeated this early. We're only 3 weeks in. A bunch of us have 2 wins and 1 loss, and a couple of us have no wins and 3 losses. But hopefully we could still stabilize that bottom group. Me, Jeff, Bond, maybe get a win here and there, try to sneak up into that final spot. It's only happened once that the number 1 seed is actually won in Turnpike to Turnpike. I forget who that was, but it has happened. But enough about that. Let's talk about this coming week's matchups. And that starts off with my Warriors of Babylon taking on John Moore's Downingtown Destroyers. This is always a matchup that I know John takes great pleasure in beating me. I know he always does research to see who's got the advantage. He always points out, we've done very well head-to-head in our league. John, this is your chance to just absolutely pound me into non-playoff existence in September. A loss this week by you, or from you, however you want me to put it. If I lose to you this week, I'm pretty much done. I think that you're going to have an excellent chance in this one. You got to like the 49ers this week. Just bounce back. They've got to be angry. Although in St. Louis, Thursday night game, it's going to be difficult. They lost there last year, and they tied to them at home last year. The Rams and Jeff Fisher seem to have the 49ers number. So this could be a tough one. Up next, you've got Brian Sheehan's 1 gram equals a pound taking on another winless team, and Jeff Araya has Cowie Goldenbaum's Hamilton Square Possum. This is, I can see already, he's got Russell Wilson back in the starting roster, although Russell Wilson now, he's not at home, he's at Houston, one of the toughest defenses in the league, so of course Jeff will play him this week. When Russell Wilson's at home against probably the worst team in the league, he benches him. Whatever. I'm really rooting here for a Sheehan loss. Somebody has to step up and stop this before it gets out of control. He lost week 1 and he's on a roll ever since. And the next one we've got a long bowl, the first one of the season, where Daddy takes on Kenny. Chris takes on Kenny Long as the Asgardian Thunder Gods visit the Gladiators. Not Kenny's Gladiators, the Gladiators. And this one, Kenny doesn't have Aaron Rodgers, and Chris is excited about that. So we'll have to see how that one turns out. Gladiators were undefeated 2 weeks ago, and now all of a sudden facing a very hot Asgardian Thunder team, and Kenny doesn't have his number 1 quarterback. We got Greg Long taking on Julius Jones here, and this one on paper doesn't even look like it's going to be close. If you look at what's going on right now, ESPN has a projection of a 55-point spread for get work done. Peyton Manning is just on fire right now for Greg. It was a great pick for him, and he might be able to ride that all the way into the playoffs, and who knows how far into the playoffs after that. Anthony Parisi's 2-1 Woodbury Wankers with Dustin Keller, Jeremy Macklin, Reggie Bush, who should be playing this week, taking on Matt Dreyfus' Fishtown off in the corner. You've got Tom Brady against Cam Newton. This one, you know, 2-1 teams. Really, whoever wins this one is going to take a big step forward into the playoff contention. Then the team who loses it will be right back with the rest of us. And in the last match, we have Jeff Szyminski's favorite Tigers taking on Mike Bonzi's Fall Jedi. Those of you who don't work at Fanatics, this is an interesting match because have you ever seen the comic strip Tom and Jerry, the one where the bulldog is walking around and the little puppy dog follows him around going, yes, Spike, anything you say, Spike. That's kind of the relationship that Mike Bond and Jeff Szyminski have. Jeff will come over and tap on his desk and go lunch, and Mike Bond, okay, yes, Jeff. So, this is going to be a tough match around the office. People are going to be rooting for both sides. The little puppy versus the big bulldog. I know who I'm going to root for. I'm not saying. I will tell you this. At Chris Long's request, I didn't talk too much about Metallica, but I will tell you it was awesome. It was awesome. It was awesome. I'm going to try to get a little video into it in a little bit for you guys, just to see maybe a snippet of what I saw last Saturday night at the world-famous Apollo Theater in Harlem. We made it out alive, but it was awesome. I'm League Commissioner Kevin Mabula. Bye!